6 alien students surrounded the human in a gravity-heavy corridor designed for warriors. They thought he was soft. They thought smaller meant weaker. They thought a Death Worlder was just a label. 47 seconds later, 6 of them were on the ground with shattered armor and broken bones, and the human was still standing, breathing, calm, in control. And the most terrifying part? He had been holding back. What happened that day inside the Galactic Academy didn't just leave 6 Vraxians in the medical wing. It forced an interstellar senate to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. Because humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy. They aren't the biggest. They aren't the most heavily armored. But when a human believes death is seconds away, something ancient wakes up. Heart rate spikes. Vision narrows. Pain disappears. And the body becomes a weapon evolution spent millions of years perfecting. The galaxy would soon learn 2 things. First, humans are far more dangerous than they look. Second, the only reason that corridor wasn't filled with bodies was because the human chose restraint. This is the story of Ethan Carter, and the day the galaxy realized that humans don't need claws, armor, or fangs to dominate a fight. Just gravity and a reason.
Under a neutral artificial sun at the Concordat Galactic Academy, 6 Vraxian cadets learned a lesson in under a minute. If you corner a human, if you remove his exits, if you decide to escalate, you had better hope he decides not to. Because when a human stops holding back, escalation does not last long. The galaxy would later record the Academy incident as minor, contained, statistically insignificant, no fatalities, minimal structural damage, several fractures, but historians would quietly note that it was the moment the Concordat stopped asking whether humans were dangerous and started asking how they remained disciplined despite it. This is the story of Ethan Parker, and the day restraint became doctrine.
The Concordat Galactic Academy orbited a blue-white F-type star in neutral space between 3 major political blocks. The station itself was a rotating tri-ring structure connected by axial spires, each ring calibrated for different atmospheric densities and gravitic tolerances. What appeared sleek and unified from the outside was, internally, a constant compromise of biology. Corridors subtly shifted pressure gradients, lighting adjusted wavelength ratios, temperature bands overlapped in invisible boundaries. The Academy was not just a school, it was a test. Every species sent its best. Diplomats in training, military strategists, xenobiologists, engineers, cultural liaisons. The purpose was simple: prevent another war. Humans had only been admitted for 8 standard cycles. Their species file carried unusual annotations: Death World origin, high-gravity native, extreme environmental adaptability, psychological resilience elevated, risk potential non-negligible. That final line made other species uneasy. Death World species were rare. Most sentient life emerged on relatively stable biospheres, predictable seasons, limited apex predator competition, moderate gravity wells. Earth had none of those. Earth rotated with violent weather systems. Its oceans hid megafauna capable of swallowing vehicles whole. Its land ecosystems were a perpetual contest of teeth, venom, camouflage, and endurance. Its gravity shaped dense bone structure and compact muscle fiber development. Humans did not evolve because they were strongest. They evolved because they survived everything. Ethan Parker was 19 standard years old. Broad-shouldered, compact, brown hair cut short, neutral expression worn like armor. He walked through the academy corridors with hands relaxed at his sides, posture loose but balanced. His footfalls were heavier than most species due to his native gravity conditioning, though he moderated them intentionally. He had learned quickly that seeming heavy unsettled people. He studied xenopolitics and structural engineering. He logged his reports on time. He did not seek conflict. Conflict found him anyway.
The Vraxians noticed him within the first week. They were difficult not to notice themselves. Average height 2.3 meters, dense skeletal framework reinforced with natural calcium carbonate plating along shoulders, forearms, and cranial ridge. Their musculature was layered beneath scaled dermis, optimized for explosive power rather than sustained endurance. Their homeworld gravity was lower than Earth's, which meant that in Academy standard gravity, Ethan was proportionally stronger than he appeared. The 6 Vraxians belonged to Advanced Applied Physics Cohort 7. They were academically gifted, physically dominant, socially confident, and curious. Curiosity in predators often manifests as testing. It began subtly, a corridor narrowing where one of them stood too long, a shoulder impact that was technically accidental, a question delivered just loud enough to carry. How fragile are human bones? Is it true your skin tears easily? Do you lack natural armor entirely? Ethan answered neutrally at first. Yes, our skin tears. Yes, we compensate with tools. Yes, our bones fracture. So do yours, he did not add. He filed 3 minor incident reports. He avoided eye contact during obvious dominance displays. He changed his route twice. They adjusted. There were 6 of them. There was 1 of him. The social mathematics were obvious, until they weren't.
The hallway chosen for the confrontation was secondary access, low traffic during mid-cycle laboratory rotations. Artificial lighting dimmed slightly to simulate afternoon variance. Ethan exited Materials Engineering 204 and turned the corner. They were already there, positioned deliberately. 2 behind him within 3 seconds, 4 ahead in a loose crescent. Karak stood at center, largest of the 6, deep charcoal plating with faint copper veining. His mandibles flexed slightly when he spoke, not an aggression, but an emphasis. Parker. Ethan stopped walking. Yes? Karak's eyes tracked him carefully. We wish to test a hypothesis. I'm not participating in anything that violates conduct policy. Mild amusement flickered among the group. Another Vraxian stepped closer. Your species claims combat adaptability. That's not a claim, Ethan said calmly. It's an observation. The semicircle tightened, not close enough to touch, close enough to remove space. Ethan felt it then, the shift. His amygdala registered encirclement geometry. The sympathetic nervous system activated, adrenaline release, increased cardiac output, peripheral vasoconstriction, muscle fibers priming, time perception subtly distorting. Threshold 1, controlled escalation. He raised one hand slowly, palm outward. Step back. They did not. The first Vraxian lunged, not a testing shove, a full-force grappling attempt aimed to seize both shoulders and drive him into the wall. Ethan stepped forward, not back, inside the attack. Inside is control. He angled his torso 45 degrees, allowing the Vraxian's right arm to slide past its intended capture point. His left forearm snapped upward, striking precisely into the soft seam beneath the clavicle plate. There, the brachial nerve cluster. The Vraxian's arm spasmed involuntarily. Ethan pivoted on his lead foot and drove his hip into the attacker's centerline while sweeping the rear leg. Mass met leverage. The Vraxian hit the deck plating with a concussive thud that vibrated through the corridor. 3 seconds. Second attacker from Ethan's right. Heavy downward strike, forearm plating aimed at skull fracture. Ethan lowered his center of gravity and rotated under the arc, his shoulder grazing scaled abdomen. His right knee drove upward into the lateral aspect of the Vraxian's knee joint, precise, targeted. The joint hyperextended under force exceeding design tolerance. A crack. The Vraxian collapsed sideways, leg no longer structurally cooperative. 5 seconds. Third and fourth came together. That was the mistake. Simultaneous attacks without coordinated angle. Ethan shifted laterally, forcing their vectors to intersect. One clipped the other's shoulder. Microsecond hesitation. Ethan seized the nearer one's wrist and rotated sharply, executing a shoulder throw using gravity as multiplier. The Vraxian left the ground. Impact dented deck plating. Ethan released and pivoted immediately towards the fourth. A palm strike to sternum ridge, not to crush, to disrupt diaphragm rhythm. Air expelled in a harsh bark, balance lost. 10 seconds. Fifth attacker attempted rear capture. Ethan sensed displacement in air pressure behind him. Peripheral awareness narrowed, but not blind. He dropped weight suddenly. The Vraxian's arms locked around his upper torso. Too high. Ethan stepped wide and slammed his heel backward into the attacker's ankle joint, then twisted violently at the waist. Human spinal rotation range exceeded Vraxian expectation. The grip slipped. Ethan seized 2 fingers and bent them backward beyond structural tolerance. Fracture. The scream reverberated. 15 seconds. Karak stepped forward now. No amusement, no testing, assessment. He attacked cleanly. A straight-line charge intended to overwhelm through mass alone. Ethan felt the surge intensify. Heart rate peaked, adrenaline spiked, threshold 2 loomed. He forced a breath. Control. He sidestepped at the last possible instant and drove a forearm into Karak's jaw hinge while hooking his leg behind the Vraxian's forward stride. Momentum did the rest. Karak hit hard. Ethan followed him down, not with rage, but with precision. Elbow to radial nerve, heel to lower rib seam. Short, brutal, controlled strikes. Karak attempted to rise. Ethan seized his arm and rotated until shoulder ligament strained audibly. He stopped just before dislocation. Karak went still. 37 seconds. 6 Vraxians lay on the corridor floor, breathing, in pain, alive. Ethan stood. His chest rose and fell steadily as he forced the chemical storm in his bloodstream to subside. His forearms trembled slightly from exertion. He looked down at them, calm. "You should consider yourselves very lucky I only broke a few bones," he said evenly. He let that settle. "I was holding back. A lot." And then he stepped back, hands open. Threat ended. Force ceased.
The footage reached the Concordat Senate within hours. Not the edited version, not the clipped hallway recording circulating among students. The full security archive. Multiple angles, biometric overlays, heart rate telemetry, frame-by-frame analysis. 6 Vraxians initiating encirclement, 1 human issuing a verbal warning, 37 seconds of controlled violence. Then, stillness. No follow-up strikes, no rage, no loss of control. That was the detail that unsettled them, not the efficiency, the restraint.
Dr. Amelia Morrow stood in the central chamber 2 days later. The Concordat Senate was built for intimidation. Tiered gravitic platforms suspended in concentric rings, acoustic harmonics designed to carry whispers without distortion. Light refracted through crystalline panels, giving every speaker the appearance of standing beneath a judgmental sun. Dr. Morrow did not appear intimidated. Human, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back tightly, eyes steady. She activated the projection field behind her. Ethan's neural scan appeared in translucent layers.
"This," she began evenly, "is not rage."
Several senators shifted. One Vraxian delegate leaned forward. Dr. Morrow expanded the scan.
When humans perceive imminent physical threat, the amygdala activates the sympathetic nervous system. Adrenaline release increases cardiac output. Blood is redirected toward major muscle groups. Peripheral pain thresholds elevate.
A second layer appeared.
However, she continued, unlike most species represented here, the human prefrontal cortex does not immediately disengage.
Murmurs. She tapped the display.
This region governs impulse control, ethical modeling, long-term consequence assessment.
The hologram shifted again.
We categorize the response into two operational thresholds.
The first region glowed amber.
Threshold 1, controlled escalation.
She listed them deliberately.
Heightened focus, increased strength output, accelerated reaction time, tactical clarity.
Another layer lit in deep red.
Threshold 2, survival override.
The chamber quieted further.
In Threshold 2, empathy response drops, pain suppression intensifies, fine motor ethical inhibition decreases.
She turned to face the assembly directly.
Mr. Parker approached Threshold 2 activation during encirclement.
A Rathari senator's voice drifted across the chamber. Approached.
Yes.
And why did he not cross? Dr. Morrow did not hesitate.
Training, cultural conditioning, self-imposed restraint.
She let the next words carry weight.
Humans teach their young to inhibit lethal capacity.
Silence.
If he had crossed Threshold 2, she added quietly, you would not be reviewing footage of broken bones.
The Senate session fractured into private caucuses within hours. The Anti-Death World Coalition requested containment measures. The Vraxian delegation requested internal review. The human ambassador requested nothing. That unsettled them more than any demand would have. Because humanity had not escalated diplomatically. They had not threatened sanctions. They had not demanded disciplinary action. They had simply submitted the full footage and waited. That was new. That was controlled.
Karak awoke in the Academy medical wing with 3 fractures and a strained shoulder ligament. Pain was not unfamiliar to Vraxians. Humiliation was. He replayed the encounter repeatedly in his mind. The moment Ethan stepped inside the first attack, the breath before impact, the absence of wildness in his eyes. Karak had expected rage, predatory frenzy. Instead, he had felt something colder, measured, deliberate. He had felt precision. A Vraxian medic adjusted the regenerative stabilizer on his leg. "You miscalculated," the medic said without judgment. Karak's mandibles flexed slightly. Yes. He did not say the rest aloud. He had miscalculated what humans were. Ethan sat alone in the observation ring that night. Artificial stars shimmered across the dome. He could still feel the echo of adrenaline in his muscles, the near pull of Threshold 2. It had been close, closer than he liked. When Karak charged, something primitive had surged upward, an ancient impulse. End it. Break everything. Leave no threat standing. He had felt it clearly, and he had chosen not to. That choice had not been automatic. It had been deliberate and exhausting. 3 weeks later, the Academy experienced its first external breach in 12 years. The first sign was not an alarm. It was silence. Ventilation systems shifted unexpectedly. Then came the impact, a concussive detonation along the secondary docking ring. Bulkheads sealed, emergency lighting engaged. Students froze in corridors. The second explosion was closer. Smoke drifted through pressure-sealed seams. Ethan felt the shift again. Not social threat, not dominance posturing. This was different. Predatory intent with lethal equipment. Across the hall, Karak stood mid-conversation with two engineering cadets. Their eyes met. No rivalry, no challenge, recognition. Karak moved first. Explosive acceleration despite mass. The baton wielder struck. Electric discharge arced across Karak's forearm plating. He did not recoil. He drove forward, shoulder-checking the raider into the wall with bone-rattling force. Composite armor cracked, even angled offline from the pulse carbine. Never meet projectile weapons head-on. He deflected the muzzle upward as it discharged. Plasma scorched ceiling plating. He stepped inside lethal range. Wrist trap, elbow strike to helmet seam, foot hook, sweep. The carbine clattered away. Third raider drew a blade, short, curved, designed for armor seams. The edge flashed toward Ethan's neck. He stepped inside the arc again. The blade sliced across his forearm. Hot, shallow, acceptable. He trapped the wrist mid-follow-through. Karak locked the attacker's torso from behind. Now, Karak growled. Ethan rotated the wrist beyond structural tolerance. The blade dropped. A precise knee strike shattered the posterior knee joint. The raider collapsed. The first attacker reached for a secondary weapon. Ethan crossed the distance in 3 strides and stomped down on the wrist before the sidearm cleared holster. Bone cracked audibly. 32 seconds. 3 raiders down. Alive. Security forces burst into the corridor moments later, weapons raised. They paused. Karak stood over one incapacitated attacker, Ethan over another. Neither continued striking. Both breathing heavily, hands open. Threat ended. Force ceased. The footage from the raider incident reached the Senate within the hour. This time, the narrative was different. Not dominance, defense, coordination, interspecies tactical synergy. A Vraxian absorbing electrical impact, a human exploiting suit flexibility. No lethal follow-through. Dr. Morrow added a final note to her report. Dual-species combat engagement demonstrates compatible escalation restraint. She looked directly into the recording lens. The galaxy should be grateful that humans prefer to stop. Cut on his forearm. Karak lowered himself beside him. You stepped inside a blade arc, Karak said. Yes. Risky. Yes. A pause. You trusted I would cover your blind side. Ethan met his gaze. I did. Karak's mandibles clicked softly. Old enemies, he said slowly, may become strong allies. Ethan allowed the smallest smile. Yeah. Under the artificial light of a neutral star, something shifted. Not just politically, personally. And the galaxy, watching carefully now, began recalculating humanity. The raider incident did not disappear into bureaucratic quiet. It detonated across the Concordat. Security footage was analyzed by 12 independent military academies. Tactical think tanks replayed the engagement at reduced speed. Xenobiologists annotated muscular contraction patterns frame by frame. But what drew the most attention was not the violence. It was the stopping. At exactly 32 seconds, both Ethan and Karak ceased forward aggression. The raiders were disarmed, incapacitated, alive. No additional strikes, no finishing blows, no escalation beyond necessity. For many species, that was the anomaly. The raider incident did not disappear into bureaucratic quiet. It detonated across the Concordat. Security footage was analyzed by 12 independent military academies. Tactical think tanks replayed the engagement at reduced speed. Xenobiologists annotated muscular contraction patterns frame by frame. But what drew the most attention was not the violence. It was the stopping. At exactly 32 seconds, both Ethan and Karak ceased forward aggression. The raiders were disarmed, incapacitated, alive. No additional strikes, no finishing blows, no escalation beyond necessity. For many species, that was the anomaly.
The Anti-Death World Coalition convened in emergency session. Their platform had been clear for decades. Species originating from extreme biospheres carried unpredictable volatility. Volatility threatened stability. Stability required containment. The Academy incident had been cited as proof. 6 Vraxians injured in under a minute. Then the radar footage surfaced. A human stepping into blade range to prevent execution. A Vraxian and a human fighting in coordinated synchronization. No loss of control, no lethal overflow. The coalition's narrative began to fracture. One senior delegate summarized it bluntly. They are not unstable. A pause. They are selective. That was worse, because selectivity implied judgment, and judgment implied moral agency.
Kirok returned to full mobility after 12 days. Regenerative stabilizers accelerated bone repair. Ligament strain required longer recalibration. He sought Ethan in the Academy's gravitic conditioning chamber. Humans trained under increased load voluntarily. Kirok found this perplexing. Ethan was performing weighted repetitions when Kirok entered. Metal plates clinked softly as the human reset the bar. "You are training under higher gravity than standard," Kirok observed. "Yes." "Why?" Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Because if I ever need it, I don't want it to feel new." Kirok considered that. "You prepare for escalation that may never occur." "Correct." A longer silence. Kirok's voice lowered slightly. "When you fought us, you could have caused permanent damage." "Yes." "You did not." Ethan replaced the bar carefully. "No." "Why?" Ethan looked at him steadily. "Because you weren't trying to kill me." Kirok absorbed that. "And if we had been?" Ethan's answer came without hesitation. "Then it would have ended differently." No threat, no arrogance, just fact. Kirok felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, respect.
Dr. Morrow's expanded report circulated to every major system within 3 cycles. It was no longer titled Behavioral Incident Review. It was titled Human Combat Inhibition Structural Analysis. Her findings were clear. Human aggression is not a constant state, she wrote. It is a conditional tool. She outlined the evolutionary background: predator competition, intra-species conflict, environmental instability. Humans survived by balancing 2 competing imperatives: rapid, overwhelming violence when necessary, cooperative restraint to prevent mutual extinction. She cited archaeological evidence of early tribal conflict followed by alliance formation. She documented how early human societies developed codified rules of engagement long before reaching planetary technological parity. The critical development, she concluded, was not violence, it was restraint layered over violence. She included biometric data from Ethan's hallway encounter. At 26 seconds, his cortisol levels spiked sharply. At 29 seconds, neural markers indicated proximity to survival override. At 31 seconds, measurable deceleration occurred. He had pulled himself back. Dr. Morrow's final line in the report became widely quoted. "Humans do not lack a monster. They leash it."
The Concordat Senate summoned Ethan Parker, not as defendant, as witness. The chamber was fuller than during Dr. Morrow's briefing. Observers from 12 systems tuned in. Ethan stood alone on the central platform. No armor, no uniform embellishment, just Academy standard attire. The presiding speaker addressed him directly. Cadet Parker, you are aware that your engagements have shifted interstellar perception. Yes. You incapacitated 6 Vraxian cadets in under 1 minute. Yes. You neutralized 3 armed raiders alongside a former aggressor. Yes. A pause. What restrains your species? The question hung in the air. Ethan inhaled once. Controlled. What restrains us, he said evenly, is that we know exactly what happens if we don't. Silence. The speaker leaned forward. Clarify. Ethan did not raise his voice. Earth almost killed us, repeatedly. Climate shifts, pandemics, wars. He met the gaze of a dozen alien dignitaries. We learned early that escalation without restraint ends civilizations. And if restraint fails, a delegate asked. Ethan's expression did not change. Then we escalate until the threat stops. A murmur rippled outward. The speaker pressed further. If the Concordat threatened humanity. No hesitation. Then you would see what restraint looks like when it's removed. No anger, no aggression, just certainty. And that certainty carried more weight than shouting ever could.
Within weeks, 3 military academies requested joint tactical seminars with human instructors. Vraxian command academies revised their physical engagement models to account for human center-of-mass manipulation techniques. The Anti-Death World Coalition lost 2 member systems. Their argument had depended on instability, but the data showed consistency. Consistency is difficult to fear. Unpredictability is easy. Humanity was not unpredictable. It was measured.
Late in the cycle, the Academy dimmed its internal lighting to simulate stellar evening. The observation dome projected Sol, a yellow G-type main sequence star, unremarkable by galactic metrics. To humans, it was home. Ethan stood alone beneath the projection. Karak approached quietly. That star, Karak said, studying it, is considered unstable by Concordat standards. Yeah, Ethan replied softly. It produces violent solar flares. Yeah. It has shifted climate patterns on your world repeatedly. Also, yeah. Karak tilted his head slightly. And you survived under it. Ethan looked up at the projection. For a long time. Karak's voice lowered. I once believed humans fragile. Ethan smirked faintly. Most people do. You are not fragile. No, Ethan agreed. But we're careful. A silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just reflective. The galaxy recalculates you, Karak said. Ethan nodded once. Good. Why? Because underestimation is dangerous. And overestimation. Ethan's eyes remained on the yellow star. Also dangerous. Karak considered that carefully. You balance between them. We try. Historians would later mark the Academy incident as minor in scale. 3 raiders injured, 6 cadets fractured, no fatalities. But its significance lay elsewhere. It was the moment the galaxy stopped asking whether humans were dangerous, and started asking how they remained disciplined despite it. Because violence is common. Control is rare. Humans carry both, and they choose, always choose. Under a yellow star that burns hotter and wilder than most, humanity learned that survival is not about the capacity for destruction. It is about the discipline to decide when not to use it. And the galaxy, watching carefully now, began to understand.
The most dangerous species in the Concordate was not the one that fought hardest. It was the one that knew exactly when to stop.
If you enjoyed this story of discipline, restraint, and human adaptability, leave a like, subscribe for more long-form HFY science fiction, and remember, under a yellow star, humanity learned to survive. The galaxy is just beginning to understand what that means.